waited for the recording to start, and I'll wait for the live stream too. Just give me a thumbs up when it's ready to go, or when we are streaming.
You are live.
Okay, good to go. All right, so I will again call the Planning Committee meeting to order after that false start. Tonight's Planning Committee meeting is being held virtually with members of Planning Committee, Executive Management Team, and the City Clerk participating via video conference. Senior leadership team are not visible, but they are available to answer questions. On tonight's Planning Committee agenda is just one matter, which is the public meeting for 405 Essa Road. Although registration prior to the meeting was encouraged, if you have not yet registered and you wish to speak, what you need to do is either email city clerks, all one word, cityclerks@barrie.ca, or you can call 797-5353 and staff will send you the information required to participate in the meeting. As I mentioned, the subject of tonight's public meeting is to review an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Sean Mason Homes, 405 Essa Inc., for lands known municipally as 405 Essa Road, located in Ward 6. Members of Planning Committee will be listening to the presentation and, of course, the comments received during the public meeting. We will not be making any comments or debating the item tonight. Members of Planning Committee will have every opportunity to provide their comments when the staff report is considered by Planning Committee at a later date. Reminder, once an application's been submitted by the developer and deemed complete, under the Planning Act, the public meeting is the mandatory next step in the legislative process, and that's where we are tonight. So just as a reminder, property owner submits an application. It's staff's role to review the application and ultimately to provide a recommendation to council as to whether or not to approve it. And ultimately it is council's decision whether or not to approve or not a planning application, but the application is made by the property owner. The purpose of the public meeting, of course, is to provide the public with the opportunity to make comments on the subject application. So we just have the ward councillor ask any questions of staff after that, and those are questions of clarification. And that allows them, of course, to ask questions on behalf of residents who might not be able to attend the meeting tonight. Other committee members, including myself, can ask questions of staff via email after, at any, or phone, or whatever we wish to do at any point before or after the meeting for further information. Any questions that are raised by deputants, by members of the public tonight, we don't do question and answer at a Planning Act public meeting, but all the questions are carefully noted by our staff and will be addressed in the staff report, which is presented at a later date to Planning Committee. Okay, Michelle Banfield, our Director of Development Services, could you confirm that notification was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for this public meeting?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Thank you very much. So I'll now call on Vanessa Simpson of Innovative Planning Solutions to provide the presentation concerning the application for 405 Essa Road. Simpson, welcome to Planning Committee, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen here. Can everybody see it?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. And if I'm quiet, please just tell me to speak louder. I will try my best. All right. So good evening, Mayor, staff, council, staff, and members of the public. As noted, my name is Vanessa Simpson, and I'm here tonight from Innovative Planning Solutions, planner on the proposed development for 405 Essa Road here in Barrie. Tonight, I'll be presenting the proposed development as it relates to the application for zoning bylaw amendment. The subject lands, shown here in red, are located on the west side of Essa Road, just north of Ferndale Drive. The site is approximately 0.27 hectares with 45 meters of frontage on Essa Road. The site also has frontage on City View. The lands are currently vacant. As we all know, Essa Road is identified as an intensification corridor where density is encouraged. It's an area that has seen redevelopment and intensification in recent years, and will continue to see redevelopment and intensification in the future. The neighborhood area shown here has a wide range of uses, which I really think speaks to that redevelopment and intensification that has been occurring over the years. The area does include a commercial plaza at the corner of Essa Road and Ferndale. There are varying residential uses within this area. You can see 2-story single detached dwellings, 3-story townhouse dwellings, 4-story walk-up apartments. There's approved 6-story residential buildings on the opposite side of Essa, and there's an approved 8-story mixed-use residential development just down the road on Essa. In addition, we also have Pratt's Gallery development that includes 4 6-story residential buildings. 2 of those developments have been recently approved, which I would just like to highlight briefly. 390 Essa Road is one of them. It's directly across the street from the subject lands. It's been approved for a 6-story apartment building containing 74 units, which is 220 units per hectare, and includes 7 affordable housing units. It provides a ratio of 1 parking space per unit with a reduced ratio for the affordable dwelling units. The second is 440 Essa. It has recently been approved for an 8-story mixed-use building, providing ground floor commercial and 7 stories residential units, containing a total of 194 dwelling units, equating to 387 units per hectare. It provides surface and underground parking with a ratio of 1 space per unit plus parking for the commercial uses. The existing land use designation is residential, you can see here on the left, and the current zoning shown on the right is an RM2 with special provision and holding provision. Now on to the proposed development. The site plan shown here provides a schematical layout of the site, which features the following: an 8-story mixed-use building proposing a total of 95 dwelling units and a density of 352 units per hectare. It proposes ground floor commercial units fronting Essa Road. As per the zoning bylaw, the inclusion of ground floor commercial use permits a maximum building height of 25.5 meters, which is essentially 8 stories. Along City View, 6 3-story townhomes are proposed. These dwelling units provide an interactive building facade rather than a blank wall. The apartment building, which is located within the center of the site, with the commercial units and the townhomes acting as a podium for the building. This provides step backs, which ensures the building conforms to the angular plane provisions. 89 condo units throughout 7 floors are proposed, ranging in size from studio units to 3-bedroom units. At this time, 12% of the units proposed are anticipated to be affordable dwelling units as per section 3322 of the official plan. A total of 104 parking spots are being proposed through both surface and underground parking, providing a ratio of 1 space per dwelling unit plus the required commercial space parking. At-grade outdoor amenity is proposed. Additional outdoor amenity is proposed throughout rooftop balconies on several levels of the building, in addition to indoor amenity as well. The building is uniquely designed. The developer is currently exploring geothermal, and it is anticipated that the entire building will be powered via geothermal. The building's enrolled in the Energy Star multifamily pilot program, which is similar to the net zero ready towns on Athabasca and Veterans. The Essa Road frontage is shown here, which demonstrates the ground floor commercial uses with glazing and signage. The applicant was exploring accessory commercial spaces through live work units. There is still an interest in this type of commercial space and may be something we further explore with staff. Centralized apartment building entrance is provided between the commercial units. These at-grade features will activate the street and provide pedestrian connectivity. The entrance to the parking and underground parking structures seen at the left. The building above this entrance is rather unique as it features a large indoor amenity space with windows only facing Essa Road to maintain privacy on adjacent dwellings. As noted, step backs are provided through the building floors. This ensures that the building meets the required angular plane provisions. They can be seen on this slide. You can definitely see some of these side step backs, as well as the next image. Again, the step backs can be seen at the 3rd, 5th, and 6th floors. Each step back provides varying depth. Balconies are also proposed to add private outdoor amenity space for each dwelling unit, as well as it provides a variation in the built form and building facade. This image demonstrates again the step backs along the Essa Road frontage, as well as the city view frontage. It also shows the height of the townhomes that would front city view, as well as the rooftop spaces, which can be seen with the blue glazing. The zoning bylaw amendment application intends to rezone the lands from RM2 with special provision and holding to MU2 with special provisions. The planning justification report lists all applicable zoning provisions and details associated. As required, a neighborhood meeting was held in June of this year. At that time, the development proposal included an 8-story building with 115 dwelling units, consisting of 6 townhouse units, 103 condo units, and 6 mixed-use live-work units. And of those total units, 15% were anticipated to be affordable units. And it provided 100 parking spaces, which required a ratio of 0.86 spaces per unit. Some of the comment themes we heard from the neighbors included concerns regarding increased traffic, queuing times, and need for additional traffic controls or signals within the area and neighborhood, concerns regarding the parking ratio, and that city view would be used as overflow parking, concerns regarding the through traffic from Essa Road to City View, both vehicular and pedestrian, building height, views, and shadowing. There are concerns about privacy for the neighborhood, construction management, as well as commercial uses that were being proposed. These comments are all listed and addressed within the planning justification report. Through this community consultation, it did result in a number of revisions to the development proposal. It included reducing the unit count to 95 dwelling units, which obviously reduced the density. We removed the live-work units and replaced them with ground floor commercial spaces along Essa, similar to that of the development at 440 Essa. And the parking ratio increased to 1 space per dwelling unit, plus the required commercial parking. In conclusion, the subject application proposes a development that consists of an 8-story building, providing 95 dwelling units in total, consisting of 6 townhouse units, which were 3 stories in height fronting city view, and 89 condo units throughout 7 floors. Again, it's anticipated that 12% of the units will be affordable housing units as per the official plan policy. Commercial use units are proposed along Essa Road, and 104 parking spaces are provided, providing a ratio of 1 space per dwelling unit plus commercial parking. The development will provide an opportunity for cost-effective and mixed-use intensification that makes use of the existing services, infrastructure, and facilities on an intensification corridor. The proposed development is an appropriate location for a mixed-use intensification within the city of Barrie. We understand that this proposal is a sensitive application and we are giving it serious consideration. I'm happy to address any of council's questions tonight as required. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Simpson. Can everyone hear me? Sorry, my internet connection's a little bit unstable, so I'm just going to call now on Michelle Banfield to give us an update on the status of the application, and I think I'm going to call in on my phone given the quality of my connection on my laptop here. So go ahead, Ms. Banfield.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, and good evening, Mayor Lehman, and to the members of Planning Committee. As always, I'll provide a bit of an update regarding the status of the application and the primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time. But before I get into the details, I did want to spend a tiny bit of time on the history of this proposed development of the site. While the previous approval really isn't part of this public planning meeting, staff have heard so many comments from the residents in the community about the history of the approvals, and I just really wanted to address this quickly. So there was a 2018 proposal that that was recommended for approval by staff, and that was approved by City Council. That decision was appealed to the LPAT, the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. It's now called the Ontario Land Tribunal if you're hearing different terms. But that decision, the LPAT made a decision to uphold the approval of City Council at that time. But in any event, the applicant has decided to proceed with another application, and that's well within the rights to do so. Staff always process complete applications, and that's what's happening right now. A public meeting is one of the first steps in the formal planning process. Although one step before tonight's meeting was actually the neighborhood meeting that was held back in June, with very well attended with over 80 participants, including the Ward 6 Councillor Natalie Harris, planning staff. I was there, the owner, the applicant, and their consulting team. At that meeting, we heard comments and questions about the impact the development will have on traffic in the surrounding area, some concerns about the insufficient parking, snow removal, and amenity areas provided, concerns about the location of the waste disposal area and associated odors that may come from that, concerns about the proposed height and the density of the building, privacy and shadowing impacts, and the ability for fire to service the building. We received some questions regarding the impact to the existing retaining wall along City View Circle, as well as concerns with the townhouse units and related parking that were proposed to front onto City View Circle, as well as some concerns about the connections between Essa Road and City View Circle. Concerns and comments surrounding the need for quality supporting studies and high quality architectural finishes, as well as questions about what types of commercial uses may be permitted. So the technical review is underway by city planning staff, as well as all of our internal departments and external agencies. The primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time include compliance, as always, with provincial planning policy, the city's official plan, and a review of those intensification targets, the appropriateness of the proposed height and density and impacts and compatibility with the surrounding land uses. Traffic impacts as a technical review based on the proposed increase in density on the site. Just a bit more about the proposed land use change, as well as the justification and appropriateness of the requested site-specific zoning provisions. As always, all the comments that were received during the technical review process, as well as what we heard at the neighborhood meeting and what we hear tonight, will be included and addressed in the planning staff report. Will most likely be brought forward in 2022 for planning committee's consideration. So all submission materials, as always, and key dates, everything associated with this application are available for viewing online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 6. Alternatively, you can also contact the file manager, who is Michelle Freeby, directly. So this concludes my presentation, and as always, I thank you for your attention.
Okay, Ms. Banfield, thank you very much for the update. We will now turn to members of the public who are here tonight to give us your comments. I will call names in the order that you registered. If you've not yet registered and you do wish to speak tonight, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. Staff will give you the information required to participate tonight. So once your name's been called, our staff will give you the ability to unmute and come out onto the panelist call here. And we will need, of course, your first and last name and your address for the record. That's required by legislation for a public meeting under the Planning Act. So I will invite our first speaker, and I see she's already on the call, Melissa Caliste. And I'm sorry if that's Caliste and I got that wrong. But Melissa, welcome to Planning Committee.
Hi, thank you. It's Melissa Caliste and it's 42 City View Circle.
Caliste. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity to present a petition opposing the current application for the development of 405 Essa Road. Let me begin by emphasizing we are opposing this particular application only. We understand and recognize the need to build a better community as Innovative Planning Solutions says. Yet 555 people have said they disagree with this particular application for development. We moved to Barrie from Brampton in 2020. Our family of 5 chose this area to grow and prosper. We purchased our dream home a year ago, and while we recognized that this area was going to grow, we assumed it would be developed through a smart growth strategy, that this future development would be in keeping with the surrounding neighborhoods on its doorstep. We were aware that 405 Essa was going to be developed. What we were not prepared for was this crass attempt to ram this application on this particular half acre. My husband and I came to the realization that we needed to do something a month ago. We needed to help show the city of Barrie and the applicant that this plan does not meet the planning department's Better Building Communities plan. If you look at the signatories on our petition, you will see that they originate from all over the city of Barrie. In less than 1 month, we had to put together at one of the busiest times of the year and in a global pandemic. You will see on the petition that many residents share our concerns about this particular application and recognize that it needs the pause button pushed. We have signatories from all up and down the Essa Road corridor, from Timberwalk, from phase 1 and 2 of the applicant's previous build. People from the neighborhood behind, from the streets all around this proposed development. Of particular note are the signatories from the Essa and Athabasca area, who are a group of residents who are currently impacted by this applicant's ongoing building and have had their lives disrupted by this applicant's project. The residents of Athabasca and Essa remain concerned with issues such as lack of parking for the building, potentially resulting in dangerous accessibility issues off Essa Road and access to their homes being blocked by cars parked on the street. In conclusion, we submit this petition with 555 names of ratepayers in the city of Barrie with the belief that it will help planning staff to realize that this intensification application is out of context to this stretch of secondary intensification corridor. We are appealing to the planning department to oppose the current plan of development for 405 Essa. In addition, we hope the mayor and council will see their constituents oppose the dream-destroying reality and this out-of-context application brings to our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for your comments. And I know the petition, if it is sent in to us, it is circulated to all members of council. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Anne Lemarquand. Anne, we'll just bring her into the call.
I'm here.
Great, we can hear you, Anne. Just need first,
Okay,
last
good.
name and address for the record,
Yep.
and then go ahead.
It's Anne Lemarquand at 21 City View Circle. Good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Anne Lemarquand and I live at 21 City View. 405 Essa Road is a property directly next to my home. I moved to City View Circle just over 21 years ago. I chose this area because it is a quiet neighborhood. But I recognize, as all of us do, that our neighborhood was and is still changing. Through the last nearly 6 years of dealing with this applicant, we were never opposed to the development of this land. I, like everyone, understand and recognize cities' need for housing and density. Our opposition to this applicant's building has always been about the choice of build form and his density targets. Now we were faced with this completely out of step, massive project that is a mere millimeter from my family home. I have been told by city staff and councillors that I should focus on remarks tonight on planning issues. I will also explain the effects that this application may have on our community and then on myself and my family specifically, if it is approved. City of Barrie planning must account for the human costs that this application like this have on people's mental health. Let me explain how this relates to me and my neighbors' mental health. Mr. Mason's consulting firm, Innovative Planning Solutions, motto reads that their firm belief that building relationships in turn builds better communities. I have yet to see how this application helps build a better community. This plan is a gross distortion of density targets, and there is no attempt at mitigation for our neighborhood surrounding this application, and for my home specifically. The firm talks about varying levels of consultation with neighbors. However, I was approached once by Mr. Mason about this new proposal, but when he realized I did not want the wall on my property line to come down, he walked away and I haven't heard from him since. The changes from the draft plan from June public meeting to what the applicant is submitting today demonstrates acute lack of regard for the residents surrounding this application. The late and well-respected planner, Al McNair, said about this application in May that this proposal is a grotesquely attempt to densify, to make a larger profit. I've spent many sleepless nights and lost almost 6 years worrying about the various plans being put forward for 405 ESSA. The latest plan would place this massive project literally millimeters from my property. Marissa, our planner, has pointed out that you cannot possibly offer any sort of buffer to myself or my neighbors with this existing application. I beg the planning department to consider the human cost to this. You will shatter any sense of privacy I have and my sons have. The lights from the well over 100 cars that will be entering the property from ESSA Road will be directed directly into my bedroom window. We know what the construction of this project would entail and what its effects would be on all of us. Constant noise and vibration from the digging and of the parking garage. ESSA Road shutdown, City View Circle shutdowns for construction. And yes, I know planning doesn't decide this at this stage of the planning process, but please look closely at what truly builds a better neighborhood. A while ago, planning passed and defended a working plan for 405 ESSA, which I personally had very little problem with. Now it seems like we are suffering through another round of a highly aggressive housing plan that will change our home life forever. How will Mr. Mason be able to guarantee that hammering steel beams into the ground, causing vibration to the soil, will not damage my property? How can he ensure that the integrity of my foundation? I am a single mother with two 15-year-old boys. One of my boys, Tim, has low functioning autism. Because of this, I only work half days, so I can care for my son in the afternoons. This proposal is also a financial burden for me, as I now feel I need to hire a geotechnical engineer firm to assess my house before Mr. Mason starts digging for the underground garage. Without a doubt, if he is permitted to take down the retaining wall that is on my property line, it will affect my foundation. My basement is less than 8 feet away from the retaining wall. Let alone all the grass on the side of the house will be dug up from front to back if the 108-foot wall is pulled out. The wall is one of the main reasons I purchased my home. In the fall, the wall and fence are covered 13 feet high with beautiful red foliage, and our family photo is taken in front of it each year. In the summer, it is a delightful sea of green. Further lack of parking and increased traffic noise directly abutting our home will adversely affect me and the family. Looking at the garbage collection for this application beside my property, if passed, as well as all the traffic in and out of the application, will travel right along my property line at who knows what time of day or night. Also, with so many units, the chance of vermin to be attracted to the waste is a real danger to my family. We have already witnessed garbage being tossed into the storm retention pond area this past spring, ending with calls to the city to get this cleaned up. These are very real concerns that we are living with if this plan is passed. The entranceway is an extremely dangerous entranceway with vehicles speeding through to the less than 100-meter away intersection, and certain problems with left-hand turns exiting this application, as well as right-hand turning onto Ferndale. Without a doubt, collisions will literally end up in my backyard. Once again, I beg the planning department to look carefully and clearly at this plan. I beg our council to consider this devastating impact on me and my family and all of my neighbors. Lastly, to the planning department, I am so hopeful they will recognize what makes for a good planning, what fits and works on this land, and how the city density along Essa Road has already changed. This application does not fit. I hope and trust city planning staff will see that there are so many valid concerns with this application and that will have a devastating impact on me and my neighbors and our community. Mr. Mason had his opportunity to build this type of build form at other locations, but chose not to. I'm so incredibly hopeful that planning will see through the applicant's plan that offers a thin justification to build this massive project, literally millimeters from my home. Help us and help Barrie build smarter and stronger than this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lamarcon. Thank you for being here tonight, giving us those comments. Our next speaker is Wayne Doucette. Wayne, we'll just bring him into the call. Mr. Doucette.
How are you this evening?
We're well, sir. Thank you. We can hear you. And if we can have your name and address for the record, and then go ahead with your comments.
It's Wayne Doucette. I live at 75 City View Circle. My concern this evening that I'd like to discuss with you is noise pollution. At 405 Essa, there will be a considerable increase in noise volume during the construction, after which it's completed. There will be increased noise pollution due to the increased density of the building itself and the increased traffic flow. But by the time that happens, it's too late. It'll be done. I want you to consider that moving forward. I've reviewed the study online for 405 road noise opinion update dated October 12th, 2021. In this report, there is a recommendation that there be a clause added to the purchase agreement that states, and I'll put this in layman's terms, you will have to keep your windows closed and the air conditioning running in order to be below the recommended noise levels for good health. This is a waiver that will be signed by potential purchasers. They have the option not to purchase. What about our neighbors? What about Anne? They did not have this option. She was never offered this waiver. She doesn't have any recourse. What about the people in phase 2 who may have purchased with the understanding that phase 3 or 405 ESSA would just be a dozen or so additional townhomes? Now, they will also have an 8-story building with arm's lengths of their property. They didn't agree to this. They may not have purchased if there was full disclosure. This building is being built millimeters from Anne's property line, and it is of grave concern. Back to the noise pollution issues. There are 3 top reasons for noise pollution. The first is traffic. With all these units being put in, and most people know that you have at least 1 car per resident, in many cases 2 vehicles. So that traffic is going to increase with this intensification project. The second reason for noise pollution is construction. There'll probably be 3 or more years of construction noise that Anne and phase 2 will have to endure. They will not be able to open their windows on a beautiful day due to construction noise, and also battle the dust that comes with construction. The third reason for noise pollution is population density. With over 95 units within millimeters of Anne's property and the structure proposed at 405 ESSA, in phase 2, it looks even closer. This will definitely cause an increase in the noise pollution. Anne's home will be next to the entrance of the complex with countless deliveries, emergency vehicles, waste disposal trucks, snow plows, landscaping vehicles, etc., etc. It will take a toll on Anne and her family. Noise pollution takes a toll on people in many ways. Physical issues, psychological issues, stress, which we all know causes numerous illnesses, and it causes sleep disorders. In my reading, I read that the best way to combat noise pollution is trees. And on the lot of 405, there are 10 or more old growth trees that will no longer be there to reduce the noise pollution. Does the city planners require the developer to keep them or replace them with new trees that will take 4 to 5 decades to be the size of the ones the developer will be removing? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Doucette, thank you very much for your comments. And our next speaker is David McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie, welcome to Planning Committee. We'll just get your name and address for the record and then go ahead with your comment.
My name is David McKenzie. I'm at 58 City View Circle. I have several questions that are or comments related to matters that have already been adjudicated before LPAT that bear upon the newly proposed development for this property. In the decision from the LPAT Tribunal regarding the previous proposal for development at 405 ESSA, the tribunal raises a number of points regarding matters of appropriateness and gradual transition, and the nature where he provides comments regarding the nature of what constitutes appropriateness and graduation on this property, and he also comments on matters of density. To begin with, I want to raise specific points from the tribunal report. The tribunal highlighted that, I quote, noting that the existing development on City View Circle is internally oriented, while the proposed development is oriented to ESSA Road, the tribunal finds that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which was passed recently by city, or passed at that time, accepted by the tribunal recently, that this proposed bylaw amendment takes into account the existing character of the area and facilitates a development on ESSA Road that's in keeping with the existing streetscape. However, This new proposal does not remain solely oriented towards Essa Road and would have entrances onto City View Circle. This is not in keeping with the existing streetscape, and as others tonight will mention, creates serious issues for City View Circle residents. The tribunal goes on to find that the scale and physical character of the proposed development will be compatible with and integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. This is in great contrast with the existing proposal, which, as has been mentioned already, Al McNair, a noted planner of many years' service, has characterized as a grotesque attempt to densify. We agree with this characterization. Ms. McLaren, Carlissa McLaren from the City Planning Department, in her testimony in the form of an affidavit, I believe, to the tribunal, also stated that, I quote, "The proposed holding symbol requires the execution of a site plan agreement to address design issues, including building orientation, placement, design and materials, landscape buffering, site servicing, access, and parking." The tribunal found that this ensures conformity with the city's official plan policy 4.2.2.4D and encourages the maintenance and improvement of the character and appearance of the streetscape and residential area in which the subject property is located. However, we are not at all confident that the use only of a holding symbol and a site plan agreement could address design issues associated with this new proposal. As you will hear, some issues from the Phase 1 development remain unresolved even today, many years later, and such matters might be difficult or impossible to manage effectively under a site plan agreement. Furthermore, the tribunal highlights additional testimony of Ms. McLaren, who stated that, I quote, "The distribution of proposed density on the subject property through the provision of townhouse built form provides an appropriate transition to adjacent low-density uses as required under the city's official plan policy 4.2.2.4B. The tribunal then concurred, finding that, quote, "The previously proposed," previously is my word, I've inserted here to make clear which zoning bylaw we're talking about. "The previously proposed zoning bylaw amendment will facilitate a townhouse development with a density that provides for appropriate transition to adjacent residential uses in conformity with the city's official plan policy 4.2.2.4. Regardless, we contend that the new density proposed for this same property is wholly inappropriate in density and one that does not provide for appropriate transition to adjacent residential uses in conformity with the official plan policy. And it's also not of a built form that provides for appropriate transition to adjacent residential uses in conformity with the city's official plan. Returning to the nature of gradual transition, the tribunal found that the height of the proposed development on the sides of the block fronting Essa Road and the entire rear block will be 3 stories, which is consistent with the height of buildings nearby and allows for a gradual transition from the 2-story dwellings on City View Circle. The tribunal finds that with the proposed rear yard setbacks of 16.7 meters and proposed buffering further assists with this transition. The end units of the townhouse block fronting on Essa Road provide a step back from the side lots and provide for transition to the heights of the nearby lower density residential dwellings. The tribunal finds that this transition is facilitated by the proposed lower height and pitched roof, the rear townhouse block adjacent to dwellings on City View Circle. The tribunal finds that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment will facilitate a built form that's compatible with the scale of adjacent properties and will facilitate a building height transition with taller buildings on the arterial road down to lower height buildings adjacent to the lower density residential area to the rear of the subject property. None of the conditions above, our comment is that none of the conditions that were just mentioned that enabled the tribunal to make that finding regarding a compatible built form are present in the new proposal. We find it impossible to conceive of a way in which the current proposal can meet the requirement of a compatible built form. Again, as is stated in section 39 of the tribunal's findings report, quote, in her testimony to the tribunal, Ms. McLaren opined that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment conforms with the city's official plan policy 4224B, which requires the graduation of densities and buffering where medium or high density uses abut low density development. I point out that this new proposal does not graduate densities or provide suitable buffering and may in fact make such buffering impossible. The density of intensification proposed for this property is approximately 352 units per hectare. That's 95 units over 0.27 hectares. How can this be seen as meeting the requirement of for graduation of density when the residential density on City View is approximately 26 units per hectare? And for phase 2 on the other side, in the 50s. Policy 4224 design policy of the official plan states that, quote, where medium or high density uses abut development of a low density nature, buffering protection will be provided to minimize the impact of lower density uses. We have questions here. Does will be not mean that this is mandatory for the development to proceed? As we've already raised, this proposal provides for building to within about 10 millimeters of the lot line adjacent to 21 City View Circle. What forms of buffering would be acceptable in this case, and to what extent, height and extent of coverage of this boundary? The same policy states that density should be graduated where possible in order to provide for integration between adjoining residential land uses. The use of the word shall, in our view, implies that graduated where possible is mandatory. Does instead, where possible, mean where possible by making changes to the proposed plan that does not meet the requirement of graduation? Or does it mean where possible according to some determination solely by the planning department? Or does it mean something else? Furthermore, if it is at the determination of the planning department, what would make graduation impossible? And I think the question of what is impossible is very relevant here. There are lots of other proposals that could have been advanced, and I think that there is a requirement to make things possible. In connection with density, we would request current city statistics regarding the density level along Essa Road intensification corridor compared to the 50 units per hectare target for the entire corridor. We would appreciate having someone quantify how approving this proposal, which involves a 0.27 hectare property, will incrementally and, more importantly, materially support the achievement of this target. In the November 21st, 2021 issue of Barrie Today, reporter Bob Bruton writes that, and I'll insert the word Sean, but he says, Mason says that this project went from 16 townhouses to 115 units after city staff reminded him this was an intensification corridor and this is where residential density should be located. Purely as a matter in the interest of transparency, we must ask if this is true, and I won't not claim that it is. This is merely Mr. Bruton's reporting, okay? But if this is true, who from the city has advocated this higher density proposal and why, especially when the first development proposal has already been approved by LPAT? In summary, I think you should be able to see from the comments that I've made primarily about the LPAT tribunal report, okay, the tribunal went out of their way to place a lot of context around what was relevant in making its decision to approve something that it felt was compatible, graduated, and compatible, and of an appropriate density for this lot. I don't think any of this, I think that should inform any future decision. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. McKenzie. Appreciate you coming and giving those thorough remarks tonight. We'll just move on to our next speakers. And our next speakers are Malcolm, Francis, and Danielle Hashbourne, who I believe are speaking together. And I see all three of you have joined the call. If we could just get your address for the record, and then please go ahead.
Hi, I'd just like to say that I'm Danielle Hackborn, and I do not live with Francis and Malcolm Hackborn, and I'll be speaking separately.
Oh, all right. Okay, who would like to go first?
Danielle.
All right.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Danielle.
My name is Danielle Hackborn, and I live at 211 Wellington Street East, which is in Ward 2. Good evening, Mayor Lehman, city councilors, and members of the planning department. The city of Barrie has a multitude of pages on its website promoting an age-friendly city, recreation and green spaces, an inclusive city, and even an active transportation strategy, all pointing to a goal of creating a livable city. While it is important to balance these aspects with intensification and the needs of planning and building for a growing community, the city of Barrie must consider the health of current and future residents in these urban intensification developments alongside meeting their intensification targets and planning goals. According to a report from the Canadian Senate, some 10% of population health outcomes can be attributable to our physical or built environment, with an additional 50% being related to social and economic determinants, many of which are deeply interconnected with environment. However, as stated by Alain Flausch, the Secretary General of the International Association of Public Transport, active transportation and lifestyles don't just happen. If investment into making streets safer, greener, and more inviting for pedestrians and cyclists doesn't happen, the likelihood of changing the behaviors of those who live in the intensification corridors to partake in a more active lifestyle and active transportation is slim. And these benefits extend beyond just that of quality of life, but can encourage social inclusion and cohesion, which can impact crime rates, mental health, and spur ongoing sustainable growth. Health Canada suggests that built environment improvements that support active transportation include traffic calming, streetscape improvements, traffic speed reductions, and vehicle-separated pedestrian and bike routes. Research has found that path connections and quality, street trees, and scenery are all aspects of route quality identified as having a positive relationship with people's decisions to walk or bike. Studies from several Canadian cities and regions show that perceptions of safety and the aesthetic quality of a route play an important part in influencing people's decisions to walk or bike, both for themselves and their children. In essence, a multi-generational impact on whether to use active transportation. From my perspective, the current development does not support active transportation goals of the city of Barrie. Rather, it will contribute to additional congestion rather than traffic calming, reduced air quality, and does not improve risk for active transportation users. In particular, by keeping or moving the sidewalk directly beside Essa Road and removing the current boulevard on City View Circle, it does not follow the boulevard requirements found in the City of Barrie's Intensification Area Urban Design Guidelines. Whoever came up with that title, God bless you. And increases the perceived risk of using said sidewalk. This reduces the safety to pedestrians and cyclists both on Essa Road and City View Circle, and makes the area less amenable or inviting for walking for both leisure and transportation purposes. Further, the submitted plans and previous developments by IPS and Sean Mason do not suggest that this development will promote streetscape improvements alongside meeting the urban intensification requirements, but rather present a man-made facade which will not promote an inviting atmosphere or a sense of community, ostracizing current residents and limiting the ability to create community cohesion between current residents in older established neighborhoods and newcomers. As our understanding of health and the built environment evolves, so too must our planning and building guidelines. If active transport is truly part of the City of Barrie's intensification plan, then the aesthetic of new builds, placements of sidewalks and boulevards, streetscape enhancements, consideration for keeping mature green spaces and trees, as well as air quality impacts must be considered. These considerations appear to be lacking in the current development under review. By ensuring high quality, aesthetically inviting new builds that support and encourage safe, active transportation, the City of Barrie will enhance not only the health, but also the appeal of its communities. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks very much, Danielle. And I will invite Francis and Malcolm to make their comments. And we can't hear you yet. You may need to unmute yourselves, Malcolm or Francis.
Sorry.
There we go. Gotcha now.
Thank you. Sorry. Good evening, Mayor Lieben, members of City Council and planning staff. My name is Frances Hackborn and I live at 44 City View Circle. And I have two separate concerns I'd like to bring to your attention. The first one is a concern with stormwater. The stormwater management pond on City View Circle was designed over 30 years ago and likely to a different standard or code than is used today. Is the stormwater management pond still compliant under the current rules and regulations of the Ontario Water Resources Act? Minimal green space will be left on the property, which will significantly increase the volume and flow rate of stormwater runoff into the system. Will these changes increase the risk of flooding in the pond and to downstream properties, such as the homes on the north side of City View and the homes in Wildwood and Timberwalk neighborhoods? Have any low impact development mitigation measures been proposed for the development, such as bioswales, rain gardens, or infiltration galleries? With climate change predicting higher intensity rainfalls and more frequent severe storms, we are concerned about the ability of the system to handle increased rainfall from the environment with the increase to impervious surfaces. As per the Government of Canada Climate Data website, the average August monthly rainfall recorded at the rain gauge at the Barrie landfill from 1981 to 2010 was 94 millimeters. In August of 2020, the rainfall recorded was 189.8 millimeters, more than double that previous 30-year average. And there were several other months that also had double of the average. My second concern is related to tree removal, which was mentioned earlier, and that there are at least 10 mature trees on the property of 405 Essa Road. Has an environmental impact assessment been completed for the current proposal? Have any species at risk been observed nesting in the trees on the site? Is it possible to leave some trees in order to preserve habitat and privacy? Once again, the impending climate change, we need to adapt to a much warmer climate and more variable and extreme weather events, as evidenced this past weekend. Mature trees take decades to grow. We need to protect tomorrow's urban forests today. Good and responsible urban design recognizes that urban green spaces and trees are crucial to mitigating the effects of climate change and any associated costs. The City of Ottawa prepared a comprehensive document on intensification and climate change and recognized that if denser multi-dwelling unit homes are built, they need to be designed with a design for nature approach. This will result in a lower climate and ecological footprint and better sustainability. Design features should include ample front, side, and rear yard setbacks to sustain the growth of mature trees. Please note, none of these features is included in the latest proposal. Planting small immature trees is not the answer, as witnessed by the continual replanting of trees along Ferndale between Essa Road and Ardagh Road. By removing the mature trees on the back side of the lot and the removal of the boulevard tree on City View Circle, the planned development would be actively working against the urban design guidelines for Barrie's intensification areas, which promotes tree-lined streets. Given the time it takes to grow large, mature trees, any newly planted trees will likely take our lifetime to gain the same size. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hackborn. Is Mr. Hackborn wishing to speak as well?
No, I will pass this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks to both of you. Thank you both very much for being here tonight. And we will move on to our next registered speaker, which are Aaron McClure and Margaret Ellis. Is Ms. Ellis on the call? There we are. Welcome both of you to Planning Committee. If we can just get your address for the record and then go ahead with.
Hi, my name is Margaret Ellis and I live at 47 City View Circle. Is Aaron on the call? Is he speaking or?
I am. It's Aaron McClure, 87 City View Circle.
Did you want me to
go ahead?
Did you want me to go first, Aaron?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, councillors, Mayor Lehman and Planning Department. I'd like to speak to you on behalf of the concerned citizens of Barrie. As a group, we do agree with intensification. We understand that it is the plan for growth in Barrie. However, a proper look at the impact this intensification will have on the traffic in the area needs to be considered. Contrary to a belief that this is a City View Circle problem, this is a City of Barrie problem because of the traffic issues that will ensue if this proposal is to go through. Consequently, a traffic study may not fully explain what we, the residents from surrounding neighborhoods, have come to know. We would like to highlight some of our observations and concerns. The traffic study submitted was conducted on Thursday, February the 14th, 2019. Although projections have been made from the data, significant changes have already occurred and a new, more thorough traffic study should be conducted so that an informed decision can be made as it relates to traffic in the area. It has been noticed that a traffic counter was placed on Ferndale and Stroud earlier this year, but we don't see any mention of traffic counts from that. Since the study, Harvey Road overpass has opened and a number of buildings have gone up, contributing to the increase in traffic. A number of projects have been approved. One is near completion. In fact, it's one of the 4-story at the corner of Essa and Veterans that wasn't mentioned by Innovation Planning Solutions. And in fact, there, as has been mentioned before, there are 4 developments within 400 meters of Essa Ferndale intersection for a total of 510 units, all needing access to Essa Road. It is unknown as to how much more traffic the 405 commercial spaces will also generate. Since it is unknown what kind of traffic intensification will bring to the intersection and area, does a traffic study encompass our concerns? Residents have already noticed the increase in traffic around the area and the difficulty in now exiting and entering Stroud Place and the side streets along Ferndale and Veterans Road. The line of cars up and down Ferndale and Veterans has increased over the past year, sometimes causing pedestrians to take risks crossing the road. The proposed entrance and exit at 405 is directly across from the plaza's entrance and exit, causing a potential increase in cross traffic. Also, there's only 135 meters to get across 3 lanes to turn left at Veterans and Essa Road. In order to alleviate traffic issues, the city has in the plans to give us a right turn lane at the corner of Essa and Ferndale. How does this fit in with the entrance and exit from 405, only 135 meters away? This busy intersection is also a place where many young children and their families use to go to and from school, from Trillium Wood School. The 390 Essa Road development is also across from 405. Again, remember, all 4 developments will need access to Essa Road. There's no space left to widen Essa Road. So will the city consider what happens when the Essa 400 exchange construction occurs alongside the other developments in a short 5-kilometer range? Essa Road is an emergency detour route for the 400, which comes right by 405 Essa Road before traffic turns on to Veterans. It's also EDR for traffic from Dunlop southbound. A number of collisions have occurred in the recent past with significant damage. Light standards, injuries, 2 were taken to hospital at Harvey road crash involving 6 vehicles. A motorcyclist seriously injured a few months ago. The accident breakdown in the last 24 months, so bear in mind, this is also during COVID restrictions, there's been 19 accidents within 400 meters and 43 accidents at Essa and Ferndale. That's for a total of 62 accidents. That is not acceptable. So remember, these numbers are likely lower because of lockdown. Accidents are hard facts. The fact is that 405 entrance exit is a short 135 meters from this already busy intersection. The proposed plan by Sean Mason Homes and his planning company IPS does not address any of these concerns, and it is not a plan to be accepted. With the upcoming 415 units already approved by council, traffic will increase. We know that. Accidents are already high. The numbers show that. We can mediate additional traffic issues by reducing the additional 95 units proposed to the original 16 townhomes on record. Once again, we are not opposed to intensification, just the impact of this over-intensified proposal. We are pleading with you to consider the infrastructure. Remember, along with the LPAT approval, the city has approved a Mason's plan for 16 townhomes, a much better fit per 0.67 acres of land. Just let that sink in. An 8-story building on 0.67 acres of land. If you look at the drawings, it's like from edge to edge. There's no room. So all these people in this area. So let's get it right this time for the residents of Barrie. Let's stick to our original plan for this space. We trust that our council and the planning department will make an informed decision with regards to the safety and well-being of our community. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Ms. Ellis. Mr. McClure?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lehman, and to all the councillors and the planning department. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to bring your attention to just one quick thing in regards to the revised development concept that's been posted for 405. Number 5, the servicing report. I see that it was revised in July 2021. And I just want to bring your attention to section 4.3, which is on page 2 in regards to fire services. It says in there that the existing fire hydrants in phase 2 would be suitable enough to deal with any fire issues for the townhouses that were going to be proposed for 405 Essa. However, there is nothing there in regards to the 8-story apartment building. And I guess the questions will be is how is the fire services going to be able to service that Essa and, or sorry, 405 Essa, and also to take into consideration as well as that the proposed plan would be 1 story higher than any entry office. And that will be it for me. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you, for coming, giving us your comments on the application. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll move on to our next speaker, and that is Ian Hunter. Mr. Hunter, welcome to Planning Committee, and we just need your address for the record, and then you can give us your comments.
Ian.
Oh, you came off mute and went back on there, Mr. Hunter. Still on mute.
Got it
There we
now.
go. Gotcha
Thank you
now.
very much. Ian Hunter from 73 City View Circle. Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of City Council, City Barry staff, and all other attendees at this meeting. My name is Ian Hunter. I'm a 21-year resident of City View Circle. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening regarding the proposed revisions to the development at 405 Esser. I'd like to focus tonight into two areas. The first is relevant experience. The second will be the reports that were issued for both the 2017 and 2021 applications. So relevant experience. I've worked in the construction industry for 37 years now. The last 21 after I emigrated to Canada with Canada's largest general contractor. More and more our clients and the municipalities in which we work are asking us to demonstrate real and relevant experience before we're engaged to construct any building. The proposed building at 405 Esser looks, in my opinion, to be a complex structure which will require detailed engineering input and experienced large building construction professionals to build this to ensure that it's built to meet the OBC, the requirements, the specific requirements of the City of Barrie, all other AHJ authority having jurisdiction requirements, and that it's built fully in accordance with structural, architectural, and any other engineered drawings. I've spent some time researching the portfolio of Sean Mason homes, and the experience to date is predominantly 2 and occasional 3-story townhomes. The jump to an 8-story building with underground parking is colossal in terms of the experience required. I would ask that city staff ensure that as part of the development approval process that they ensure the builder has the necessary knowledge, training, and experience that is required to undertake a building of this magnitude. My second area is the reports. I haven't dealt with these in any particular order, and some of them have been touched on before, so I'll shorten up where they have been touched on before. The arborist report has not been updated for 2021. How will the 4 mature trees behind the retaining wall shown in 2017 as required to be preserved now be protected? I think the plan will change and they will now be demolished or removed, whatever the correct terminology is. The functional servicing report 2021 covers several areas. Firefighting, the hydrant location of 100 meters to the nearest one has already been discussed. I won't go there again. There's no discussion at all in that report regarding access for emergency vehicles, in particular the fire truck. How is that to be addressed? Sanitary sewer. Doesn't discuss the reduction in capacity of the city infrastructure. Stormwater being discussed at length already, but again, just pushed away as being nominal change, no calculations required to demonstrate. The architectural checklist, which I assume when you say no means that you don't have to produce an archaeological report. There's no indication of who filled in the ministry form. It's just a series of checkboxes. Was this an expert in archaeology that submitted that form? The traffic report. The report appears to be based on traffic counts from 2019. Since then, the Harvey Bridge has opened. I, in particular, have noticed a huge difference in traffic exiting City View onto Stroud and ultimately onto Ferndale. The wait times at that intersection are noticeably different from a year ago. The word accident doesn't appear anywhere in the traffic report, yet we all know that Esser Ferndale is a known accident black spot. Perhaps this whole functional servicing report should be rejected and revisited to give a whole holistic account of reality. Construction impact to the community report. I don't know if this actually exists, but I think this would be a good idea for the city to request of Sean Mason Homes. How is your operation going to impact the residents in the area? Snow storage report, missing in 2017, also missing in 2021. Is there a plan? If not, one should be developed. Geotechnical. subsurface water collection. So by that, I mean the water that is collected at the foundation level of the building by the weeping tile system. Is this planned to be discharged to the storm or sanitary water sewers? And is any treatment required before this happens? A full hydrogeological report should be prepared on the water with samples taken to verify the water quality. Construction phase. How is water from the construction phase managed to ensure sediment doesn't reach the Lake Simcoe watershed? Shadow study, part of the architectural drawings. There has to be an error here. The shadow doesn't move from one time of day to the next. This should be rejected completely. The architectural renderings show a skewed view of the building. The north side of the north side of the building. Why is 21 City View shown with its foundation level at the second floor of the building, of the new building? This is to make the 8-story building look less imposing. And just to conclude, reports overall. The reports appear to be lacking in detail or are missing completely for the proposed development. I trust that the city will ensure all reports are produced or updated, reviewed by the appropriate in-house or external expert prior to being accepted. Thank you very much for your time this evening, for listening to me.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hunter, for your remarks. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is Graham Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery, welcome to Planning Committee. And we just need your address for the record. And go ahead with your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, council, city staff, and attendees, and season's greetings to everybody. I'm at 53 City View Circle, but I would like to start out by recognizing the folks who live in Phase 1 and 2, 369 and 401 Essa Road, known as Phase 1 and 2 of Sean Mason Townhomes. In particular, Louise Mulcrad, who in her continued role as on the condo board for Phase 1, asked me specifically to advocate for Phase 1 and Phase 2 Sean Mason Townhomes as we share concerns. I know Ian has pointed out that the original farmhouse on the property, there was an architectural checklist, but the house was built in 1860 and moved to its former site of 405 Essa in 1889. Was there any attempt made to have an historical assessment completed? Was the Heritage Committee informed when it was demolished? Excuse me, after it was demolished after the unsolved arson on the property of 2 years ago? Further, given the location of the Huron-Wendat village and the Harvey Veterans Woods area, has there been any proper archaeological study done of this potentially historic site? Turning to build form and agreements for buffering made over the past 5 years of dealing with this applicant, surrounding residents feel this also relates as to how this applicant completes his application and the follow-through. Upon approval of the Phase 2 townhomes, the need for additional buffering was agreed upon by the planning department, the applicant, and neighbors. In September of 2016, a meeting was held, and at this meeting, supplemental plantings were drafted by the applicant and agreed upon by all. There would be a minimum of 8 4-meter and 5 2-meter coniferous trees to be planted. However, beginning in the spring of 2017, inquiries were being emailed by various neighbors to city officials and councillors as to when exactly these plantings would be put in. We were now seeing noise and light intrusions from Phase 1 and 2. Every year for the past 4 years, emails were sent. Finally, almost magically, this past September, the plantings took place. Why did it take 5 years to plant 13 trees? Now, how this is relevant is to look at a similar pattern of delay in agreed upon plans of development from residents of Phase 1 and 2, where landscaping plans similarly had major flaws, with the result being 3 years after moving in June 2019, condo residents volunteered to finally put the agreed upon plantings for Phase 1 in themselves. The residents were then presented with an invoice in excess of $7,000 by the applicant, Sean Mason, for these agreed upon plans. The board of directors have chosen, of course, to not pay this bill. Further, there are a number of site-specific built form concerns that Councillor Harris has and would be readily available to city staff that remain outstanding in completion of the 2016 phase 1 construction. Again, these issues are relevant as to help our planning department detail what type of community is being built. Most alarming to many residents is the glib dismissal in the current planning justification report for 405 ESSA of the proposed amenity space for prospective residents of that built form. Many residents purchased their units in phase 1 and 2 with the understanding that phase 3 would be a townhome with common amenity space to be shared by all. The 2017 plan provided to the city for 405 ESSA showed 16 units with a 700 meter squared amenity landscape space that all residents were to use. The new plan now shows a total of 212 meters of green space beside a parking lot. When that number is actually calculated, it's reduced to 175 meters squared. In the planning report for this initial project, city staff wrote glowingly of the 700 meters amenity space as an example of a compact pocket community. We asked the planning department to justify how 175 meters of amenity space meets any definition of a family-friendly space, particularly in light of what owners had been promised and were expecting from their families from the previous 2 units. We've discussed snow removal and storage with the current plan of application. There are some significant concerns that the residents in phase 1 and 2 have. The current plan has parking along the north side of the proposed property facing the units at the south end of phase 2 townhomes. During the June 22nd meeting, Ms. Simpson stated that the snow would be stored in these spots and would be removed when necessary. This then could result in the snow load being pushed over onto the roadway along phase 2 or onto the smaller green space next to unit 104 in phase 2. Thus, the snow issue becomes phase 2's issue. We've discussed parking. Let's take a look at the proposed commercial space for 405 ESSA that has 2 spots allotted to them. That's preposterous. Even given the push for people to use alternatives to driving their own vehicle, the experience of residents in phase 1 and 2 reveal that they and renters of the units have at least 2 vehicles per unit. There's 59 units in phase 1 and all properties have at least 1 parking spot. Some have 2 and some have 3. There's a total of 9 parking spots, 2 of which are for handicap parking. Phase 2 has similar parking numbers. There's no street parking in these phases. This current plan is 1 spot per unit. How can this be? Residents have relayed that even with these parking spots that they have, there is still a constant squeeze on parking in phase 1 and 2. And again, this is confirmed by the condo board. They've even had to resort to legal proceeding against residents who are abusing visitors' parking. Residents have been told by Mr. Mason when parking concerns were raised to, quote, park across the street in the plaza, end quote. With the rapid increase in overnight parking, the plaza has resorted to towing away vehicles. So as a result, we're now seeing overnight parking on nearby City View Circle. Residents of City View have heard from school bus drivers, sanitation and delivery services that are complaining about cars parked on City View and making travel dangerous for those vehicles on the street. This again speaks to the reality that there is currently inadequate parking in the immediate area, and having 1 spot per unit or even 1.5 doesn't match up to the reality that this application clearly does not address parking and thus cannot be classified as a compact pocket community. While looking at the various tailor-made reports and justification for this application around parking and traffic, we asked city planning staff to kindly remember the current state of affairs around parking while looking at this applicant's planning justification. Council, staff, mayor, thank you for your time this evening. You've heard from many of us. We are all looking forward to being part of the solution going forward. We want to work on this application collaboratively and being a part of intensifying the city and having our concerns respectfully responded to in a timely and professional fashion. We trust that city staff will see the plethora of housing opportunities around our city and use innovative solutions such as density swaps to ensure that the land is developed in a safe and constructive manner for our city. Thank you very much and have a great break, I hope, coming up.
Thanks very much, Mr. Montgomery, for all those remarks. We appreciate you being here tonight. Our next speakers are Stephen and Tasha Twiss, I believe. I see Stephen Twiss, you're on the line. I think we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Stephen Twiss. My wife will be off camera this evening. I live at 38 Cityview Circle. Good evening, Mayor Lehman, Deputy Mayor Ward, members of City Council, the Planning Committee, and City staff. My family and I reside 23 meters from the proposed 3-story and 8-story development that is being discussed this evening. I will be speaking not only for myself, but on behalf of my family and our other residents in our community and city that did not feel comfortable speaking in front of council and in a public forum. For those residents that did not present this evening, I'm sorry, I'll try to be as eloquent and as prepared as you were, and it'll be a tough act to follow. Well done, everyone. We would like to make it clear that we are not opposed to the development of 405 Essa Road, but we think that an appropriate and sensitive transition to an existing 30-year-old low-density neighborhood should be addressed and merit an open discussion. First, I'd like to address the comments on the planning justification report submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions regarding the previous applications that were submitted for approval on Essa Road. It was stated that 390 Essa Road is approved for 6 stories, which is a fact, but it was not mentioned that this property is 30% larger than 405 Essa Road and is only approved for 220 units per hectare. The applicant is asking for 352 units per hectare on the subject lands, which is a smaller lot that is less than 1 meter from an existing 2-story home that is below the grade of Essa Road. It was also mentioned that 440 Essa Road is approved for 8 stories, but this land is on 1.24 acres. That's twice the size of 405 Essa Road. And that property, 440 Essa Road, sits 0.42 kilometers away from the existing residential neighborhood that will be affected by this proposal. These are not comparable examples. If we want to present comparables, let's discuss the applicant's phase 1 and phase 2 that have been approved and built, along with some concessions to address some concerns that were presented at neighborhood meetings and presentations that were made in front of Mayor Lehman and council members regarding the transition to the existing residential neighborhood. The applicant's phase 1, which is 120 meters from our neighborhood, was approved for 3 stories and 59 units per hectare. A 6-story and even an 8-story could have been proposed for this property, but the applicant did not present this. The applicant's phase 2, which is 40 meters from our neighborhood, sits on 2 acres and is 3 times a bigger lot size than 405 Essa Road. It was approved for 3 stories and 56 units per hectare. A 6-story and even an 8-story could have been proposed on this property, but again, it was not presented. These phases built by the applicant are better comparables to the subject lands than those previously mentioned by IPS. Reminder that these subject lands are on 0.67 acres, which the applicant's previous approval was for 60 units per hectare. Next, we'd like to mention some concerns and questions that we have that some may have been previously mentioned, but I'll try to give it a little bit more context. Privacy of the existing residential neighborhood. Both front yards and backyards. Due to the subject lands being at a higher grade than Essa Road, all buildings will appear taller than stated at the City View Circle street level. Councillor Harris, thank you for taking the time to meet with some of us to experience this drastic visual difference in grade. Any building on subject lands will tower over the existing neighborhood, and there will be no privacy on front yards and backyards. On the applicant's previous approved proposal, some of this was addressed. There was a 2-meter high fence that was to be constructed along the existing 3-meter high retaining wall. All the mature pine trees on the subject lands were to remain to provide buffering and privacy. All windows on the buildings were to be facing Essa Road and the stormwater retention pond. None would be facing the front yard or backyards of the existing residents. With this new proposal that is being presented, all of these concessions have been removed. Why? Our next concern is the transition and integration height. On the applicant's previous proposal, he conceded to reduce a 4-story unit to a 3-story, and that 4-story was purposely set back close to Essa Road, with the end units having sloped roof to make it appear as 3 stories. All these height concessions were removed with this new proposal. Why? Access to City View Circle. The planner's previous comments on the previous proposal stated that the applicant cannot access City View Circle without city's permission, as the retaining wall is city property. Application and approvals have excluded any access to and from City View Circle as per phase 2 consultations. And all these concessions have been removed. Why? We discussed grading. Essa Road is at a higher grade than the existing neighborhood. To deal with this concern on the previous application, the applicant commented that the landscaping plan shows retained mature trees atop elevated portion to offer additional privacy with increased setbacks to buildings. All these concessions have been removed. Why? Character and context. We have concerns that the current application does not fit in character or context with the existing residential low-density neighborhood. The previous application had the planner and applicants state that along their phase 1 and phase 2 developments, all 3 phases demonstrated family-friendly pocket communities with supporting amenities. The previous urban brief prepared by Sean Mason, the applicant for this property states, and I am reading this directly from the brief, the developer believes that ground-related urban multifamily homes provides a more cohesive continuation of the already built community, that the residents can have their needs met by ample commercial development in the area and is more accommodating of existing residential developments. And I'll continue along with some other comments on that brief. Reciprocal arrangements with the 2 neighboring condominium corporations will allow shared access and use of all the parquet facilities in the community, with phase 3 proposing a large open space for active play in all seasons, with a landscape and board fence border on the 2 sides abutting existing residential communities. Why have these concessions been removed? And why were the residents of phase 1 and phase 2 misled? And why does he think this area needs more commercial development now when he stated previously there is ample commercial space in the area? So I'd just like to move on and remind everyone the comments regarding transition on the staff report regarding the applicant's previous proposal for 16 units, 60 units per hectare that was previously approved. Some of these comments were presented previously by Dave McKenzie, but I'll just quickly go over them again. In that staff report, section 85, I'm going to read directly from that. The end units associated with building 1 have been reduced to 3 stories in height so as to provide a step back from the side lot lines and provide a smoother transition to the abutting 2-story low density residential development to the immediate south. This revision is accommodated through a provision of a pitched roof consistent with a number of other residential properties in the area. I'll read a comment from section 93 of that staff report. New developments are expected to provide an appropriate transition to low density residential land uses. There are many ways in which a new development can provide an appropriate transition to low density residential land uses, including the provision of side building step backs to reduce height and shadowing impacts of tall buildings, increase setbacks to provide appropriate spatial separation between buildings, and buffering in the form of oversized infill plantings, vegetation, and tight board fencing. I'll just point out one more comment from that staff report, section 94. Several design elements have been incorporated into the proposed in order to provide an appropriate transition to the existing 2-story single detached dwellings in the immediate south and west, such as increased rear and side yard building setbacks, side step back provisions for building 1, provision of oversized buffer infill plantings. As such, planning staff are satisfied that the proposed development will provide an appropriate transition from the Essa Road intensification corridor to the residential lands to the west and adjacent single detached residential property to the immediate south. These are just 3 comments that I've referred to in the staff report for the applicant's previously approved proposal for 405 Essa Road regarding transition. With the applicant's new proposal, along with the presentations today, I am having a difficult time trying to understand how the planning committee and city staff can make the same comments on transition to the existing neighborhood and community. We ask that you consider all our comments that were presented to you this evening. Please ask questions about sensitive intensification, transition, integration, height, grading, how many mature trees will remain on the property, buffering, traffic, privacy, character, and most importantly, the aggressive context of this new proposal. And I'll repeat that, please. The aggressive context of this new proposal. Just a reminder that the applicant was approved for 60 units per hectare and is now applying for 6 times as much on just over a ½ acre of land. What exactly are we doing here? Thank you for your consideration and good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Twist, for your comments. Thanks for being here tonight. We will move on to our next speaker. Now I've got that, yes. So I have Sherbin Kalist having registered. Are you there, Sherbin? Sorry, I think you're still on mute. Sorry, you're still on mute. We can't hear you. Mr. Kalist, Ms. Kalist, are you there?
No, he won't be speaking today.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We will move on if we have Carl Buchheit on the call. I'm not sure I see him though. Do we, Mr. Buchheit, if... okay. Sorry, yes, we were looking for Carl Brukite. Is that who you're referring to, Ms. Caliste?
Good evening, Mayor Lehman. He is not on the line at this point. I don't believe he's sharing the line with Ms. Caliste.
No, I don't think so either. Okay, so we will move on then to, on behalf of City View Circle Community Group, we have Marissa Handley and Brian Bolvar. Marissa and Brian. All right, welcome to Planning Committee, and we just need your addresses for the record, and then go ahead and give us your comments.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Marissa Handley, and I am a planner at Skelton Brumwell and Associates. Our company address is 93 Belfarm Road, Suite 107. Brian will not be joining me this evening. He was on earlier just to observe the beginning of the meeting. So, good evening, City of Barrie staff, Mayor Lehman, and the Planning Committee. I am here on behalf of Skelton Brumwell and Associates, who is engineering, planning, environmental firm located here in Barrie for over 50 years. We have been retained by a group of City of Barrie residents that are in opposition of the zoning bylaw amendment by Sean Mason Homes at 405 Essa Road. It is our objective of the retainer to peer review the supporting studies and reports of the ZBA for 405 Essa Road submitted by various consultants. Our project team includes Michael Winia, senior planner, ecologist, and partner at the firm. He will be leading the review of the submitted planning and ecological reports. Scott Brumwell, who is the principal engineer and president. He will be leading the review of the traffic studies submitted. Brian Bolivar is the senior project engineer and vice president. He will be leading the review of the stormwater management and geotechnical reports. And Matt Bertram, he is the senior project engineer and partner, and he will be reviewing the servicing reports. So at this point, we have notified the various consultants, and as a result, have also spoken to the applicant, Mr. Mason. So we have let them know that we are reviewing the authored reports based on planning policies and engineering design standards. So we believe that now is a good time to inform staff and council of this peer review as well. So our clients at the opposition group have very well articulated a number of concerns of this development during this meeting. I hope that these concerns and comments have provided the planning committee real life concerns of this development. At this point, SBA has done a preliminary review of some of the supporting zoning bylaw amendment studies and reports, and have flagged a number of issues that we anticipate will be raised by staff and other reviewing agencies. We'll provide these comments and concerns in a formal report to staff between now and when the planning committee makes a decision. And that's basically all my presentation is. On behalf of the opposition group of the zoning bylaw amendment by Sean Mason Homes at 405 Essa Road, I'd like to just thank everyone who participated. Great job, everyone. And thanks for the attention of the planning committee and staff.
My apologies, folks. My internet just dropped at the very end there. And Ms. Hanley, have you complete? You were just finishing, I think, as my internet had copped off, and everybody's been waiting awkwardly for me, haven't you? Sorry about that. I'm back. Ms. Hanley, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate you being here. And of course, any submissions you make on behalf of the residents will be circulated to all members of Planning Committee. So thank you for that. Brings us to our final registered speaker, who is Stephen Trotter. Mr. Trotter, welcome to Planning Committee. And I'm pretty sure you know the drill, but if you could give us your address for the record and then proceed with your work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Steve Trotter and I live at 12 Primrose Crescent. I thought I would attend this evening's meeting because I do have some experience with the previous application, and certainly appreciate Mr. McKenzie's outline of the work that went into that application. And I have to say, I thought there was an awful lot of good work gone into that application and the outcome of that application by planning staff. And as you've heard, the property was supposed to be phase 3 of a multi-phase townhouse development, and that is what LPAT has currently approved for the site. It's generally accepted that development should be tiered from single family use to multi-residential to high-rise, and this proposal has it all backwards. Phase 1, which is a budding timber walk and some 4-story walk-ups, as you've heard, is where the townhouses are. And this proposal has an 8-story building abutting single-family homes. So I'm not quite sure where the planning arguments are for that. And we've just heard from Mr. Twist that there was opportunities, and probably far suitable opportunities. If you look at the streetscape diagram that was shown earlier, in phase 1 as an example, huge green space buffers between City View and that development. But for whatever reason, the developer chose to go with townhouses. And now at the last minute decides that he wants to go in the opposite direction of what's approved and do an 8-story apartment building. I would suggest that the scale, the scope, and the massing of this proposal is not suitable for the location. And it should be noted that neither 390 ESSA or 440 abut single detached homes. They're either semi-detached, townhouses, or things like that, which lends to that generally accepted idea that development should be tiered from singles to multi-residential to high-rise type development. Though the context may not be exactly the same, I believe that some of the arguments that Councillor Harvey recently articulated with respects to a proposal on Mapleview Drive also apply to this development. And I thought those comments were very apropos for that development. And I know that one of those arguments was that the Mapleview Drive location was not in an intensification area, but I still think some of the other arguments that he brought forward on that development apply to this one. My only other comment would be regarding this development is that just because you can, based on things like it's an intensification corridor, doesn't mean that you should. And I think that has to be remembered in this regarding this development. As I said at the start of my comments, I thought there was a lot of good work put forward to arrive at the proposal or the development that has been approved by LPAT. I think it takes into account many of the issues that you've heard tonight. And I would encourage members of council not to support any development of this magnitude on this site, and reinforce their support for the development that's currently assigned on the property.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Trotter, for coming and giving us your thoughts on the application. I'll just make a final check with Ms. McAlpine, whether we've had anybody call in or register to speak during the meeting. Any additional speakers?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. No, we have not had any additional speakers register.
Okay, thanks very much. Then I will go to the Ward Councillor, Natalie Harris, for questions of clarification to the applicant or to staff. Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Thank you to everyone who took the time to provide a deputation, and thank you to staff, and thank you to IPS Consulting as well for all your work. So I do have a few questions. First, I was just wondering if IT or Ms. McAlpine can pull up slide 8 of the presentation. Actually, not of the memo yet. Perfect, yeah. Wait a second here. Well, maybe it's actually not slide 8. It says slide 8. If we could go.
We're just switching between the memo
Okay.
slide deck.
Sorry. Thank you.
No intent to confuse.
No worries. Perfect. Yes, that's the one. Thank you. So obviously my main concerns are height and density with this proposal. This has been a very long journey, if you will, for the residents, not only on City View Circle, but in the condos in the original phases of this development. And it's interesting because the first proposal with just the townhouses, like we've already mentioned, had gone to LPAT, and it was ruled that it was fitting and appropriate to that area and would blend in well with the City View Circle single homes there. So it's just, I'm saddened that we're at this point, to be honest, for the residents that have been going through this for so long, because in my opinion, the height and density of this is just not even practical. So the reason why I pulled up slide 8 is to just point out on the far left of the screen, the City View Circle, and how much lower it is. So if you drive, and I really encourage everyone to drive on City View Circle, and to see where one of the people that spoke today, her home is right next to this, like literally less than a meter away from the proposed development. And the City View Circle Road is quite low down. So as you can see, there are all the numbers there. So the perception of this building will even be bigger than this. So walking along the sidewalk, which is very limited already on City View Circle. So if you're actually walking on the sidewalk right where that picture is, there's really hardly any room for I guess it would be a boulevard before the retaining wall starts and goes up to this site. There isn't much room, so it'll be a building. The building will be there, and I just want to kind of paint the picture, but I definitely encourage anybody to drive along and see how much lower City View is if you go on that street.
Sorry, Councillor Harris, legitimate points, but it's just questions of clarification. And
okay,
so
sorry,
I just
my
need
bad.
to ask you if you do have a question in this.
I'll go to a question now. Okay, sounds good. So if we go to page 3 of the memo now, please, Dawn, thank you, which is what I think you had first. Perfect. Great. So my question is for the IPS planner. So front yard setback. So we have your MU2 zone, 1 meter is what is requested. And this proposal is 0.04 meters of front yard setback. So according to my calculations, that's only 4% of the compliance of what is requested for the MU2 zone. I'm just wondering what your justifications are to go that much lower.
Sure. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Harris. What we see in front of us here today showing the 0.04 is not a true picture of the setback we are asking for. This distance of 0.04, I believe I have to reference, it's completely spelled out in the planning justification report, but it is to the 3rd story balcony on one corner of the property. So it is not changing necessarily the front yard setback where there would be sidewalk or plantings or potential a patio space and so forth. If you look at the site plan drawing, the on-ground setback is much different than that one location. So I just wanted to put it into a little bit of context because I feel like it's been pulled out of context, but it's outlined in the planning justification report, that specific location.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, another question to you. I'm so sorry, your name is completely gapping me. Is Melissa? Jessica?
It's Vanessa.
Oh,
no
Jessica,
problem.
Melissa, maybe together is Vanessa.
Yeah,
I
get it all the time. No problem. No problem.
Thank you. My apologies. I guess I had a couple more points about this page particularly, and it all has to go with the comparison and the percentages of how much lower we're going from the MU2 zoning. That is what we're looking for in our plan. So I again encourage everybody just to really focus on it. It's just so much drastically different than what we are asking for. So my next question again is for you, Vanessa. What impact would happen to the existing retaining wall? So if this gets approved, would you have to change the existing retaining wall? And if so, what kind of changes would occur?
Through your worship, Councillor Harris, I am a planner and not an engineer. So I am not going to be able to speak to this in full context on exactly what this all means. But I believe the current functional servicing report that's included with the submission is proposing removing the retaining wall and a retaining feature, which will likely be the side of the building and parking structure will essentially act as the retaining feature in place of the wall. But like I said, that's an engineering question that we can get more clarification on.
Okay, that's still good to know though, that is potentially what would happen to the retaining wall that has all the beautiful leaves and everything that kind of go down it there. And what happens, who is responsible? This might be to you or maybe to our staff. What does happen if foundation such as Anne, who did her deputation, what if her foundation is damaged due to vibration because of the close proximity of her home? Who is responsible for fixing that?
Through your worship, I would pass that question on to staff.
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. So some of those items are definitely taken a look at by our field staff. If and when an application gets approved and moves through the approvals process, the work in terms of construction, management, all kind of filters over to our field staff. And there are many times that there are many things that happen that the field staff will go back to the consulting engineers that are working on site and require that they rectify kind of almost anything that would happen on an existing property. Understanding it's frustrating for residents, when they are experiencing some of those impacts of construction. But definitely we loop back with, as I said, the consulting engineer on the site, and then they would take a look at what's happening, and if it actually is related to the construction, then they kind of take care of it through that way.
Thank you. And Dawn, you can take down that memo. You can put it to full if you want for everybody. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. My other question again is to Ms. Banfield. So can the city refuse to process a complete application? How does that, what happens if that, is that option? Is that an option?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, no, a complete application that's received by the City of Barrie needs to go through the planning approvals process. Planning staff aren't the approval authority, and so in essence, to say that we would refuse an application or we would refuse to process an application would ultimately take away the decision making process and the actual public planning process that actually rests with council. So no, if it's complete and we have everything that we need, we go through the planning process.
Okay, great. Another question through you, Mayor Lehman. So the application that was in between the first and this application, how far did that get, again, if you can remind me? And is it possible, it's a two-part question, is it possible for Sean Mason Homes to come forward and just suddenly go with the second proposal? Where does that stand?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, I don't know what you're talking about, the second proposal. So there's the 16 townhouses, and that was the one that was approved by the LPAT. Then the applicant decided to try something different, to do a different proposal. Now that proposal has changed a bit from like the neighborhood meeting to the application, but it's basically, there's two proposals, the one that was approved and then the one that is here this evening.
Okay, I'm going through my notes here. Okay, please hold. There we go. So could Sean Mason Homes go and still use the previously approved 16 townhouse application if, say, magically everyone was on board with thinking that this just doesn't fit, it doesn't work with the density and the height especially, would he be able to go back to the plans that were approved by LPAT?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, yes, the planning, the original approval is still on the property, and while that was a land use approval, the applicant would still need site plan approval to build that, but that approval is valid, remains valid.
Okay, that's good to know. So when will this return to council? What are next steps for this?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, it is the applicant is going, obviously there was a lot of comments and lots of questions raised tonight. So the onus then is always on the applicant to respond back to staff with what we call a comment matrix. And often the comments result in some changes to the plan. And so ultimately it'll be up to the project team to kind of respond to those comments. And then that just depends on when they get something to staff, and then we continue to circulate it. I believe the city still have the technical review of the current application is still out. So while we have the public comments, we don't necessarily have all of the technical comments. So that's all going to be bundled up and given back to the applicant, and then they're going to have to digest that and take a look at what those comments say, and if there's changes to either plans, reports, studies, and they'll have to factor that in before and then it has to come back to council, back to staff before anything will come back to council.
Okay, that's good to know. So I think so many great questions were asked tonight by residents. I don't want to repeat any of them. We're going to get the report with those answers, so that's great. So I guess really in closing for me is my open question, it's a question, Mayor Lehman, I'm just gonna say, is we had a built form that was approved and very compatible with the surrounding built forms. I would just like some more, in writing report as to why such a drastic increase in height and density has been made, especially after the LPAT review was done. It was such a long process, and the residents surrounding have come to accept that that was what was going to happen. The townhouses were going to be built. Because like, really, when do we say enough is enough with respect to, I'm just even concerned for this feedback as well for the people that live in phase 1 and phase 2 of the Mason Homes townhouses on Essa Road. I put myself in their shoes as well. I'm buying something because I think there will be townhouses in the remaining lots. And now we have a proposal for an 8-story condo. Maybe it's time, and I'm going to do some thinking about this, but to have planning committee develop a policy that includes clear language, and I'm reading from my notes right now, that requires subsequent phases of a development be reported at the beginning of a large development, and require the builder to keep their word so that when purchasing homes in initial phases, the purchaser knows what will be built in the empty space, or be clear that there are no promises to what built form will be held in the future. I do believe, and it's been said that people that were have purchased on Essa Road and the townhouses that are there were told that this wasn't what was going to happen. So I think it is warranted and a valid request for my question to be answered about why. Before, obviously, dollar signs are in front of what my front thought would be. You're a builder. Builders need to make money. That's what they do. But this just doesn't fit into the built form. Please, I'm asking all planning committee, drive down City View and see how close that one house is next to this development. And my question would be, what do you think if you lived there? So
I guess I'll give the applicant the opportunity to answer the why question.
Sure, yeah.
Why come back with so much more density?
So I'll make a few comments, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a few comments, but again, we'll provide it in writing as well as mentioned by Ms. Banfield. We do provide that comment matrix. So the original application was submitted in 2017. A considerable amount of time has passed since that application was made. It obviously went through city process for approval and then through the LPAT process for final approval, which it received in the more recent year. So given the amount of time that has passed and given the other approvals for mid-rise buildings along Essa Road, consisting of 6 to 8-story, either full residential buildings or mixed-use buildings. Considering those approvals, this site is a candidate to reconsider the development proposal that has been approved and that could potentially be approved for this site. So, it's kind of time and what has happened in those years and where we sit today with the developments that have been approved along the Essa Road corridor. So I think that's just a little bit about the why. And given, phase 1, when phase 1 of Sean's site at Essa was constructed and built and approved, it was the first project on the intensification corridor. So this was something very new to everybody. And there has obviously been an evolution since then to where we are today with 6 and 8-story buildings being approved in multiple locations.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mayor Lehman, again, I just want to make clear as a clarification that what hasn't changed are the homes on City View, and especially the home that's right beside this building. So I would like you to also include in your comments and to my question about why is how much consideration has been made for the well-being of the residents of City View, and especially the resident that lives right beside this application. And let me just preview, make sure I have everything. I believe so. Again, I don't want to repeat any other questions that have been asked.
Thank you so much, Councillor Harris. Lots of great questions and many raised by residents as well over the last 2 hours. Thank you to everyone who was here. There was obviously a lot of effort put in, an awful lot of effort put in to many of the comments that were delivered tonight and work that was done in advance by many residents regarding this application. So I will say thank you for bringing thoughtful and fulsome remarks to Planning Committee this evening. Of course, the public meeting is one of the earliest parts of the process. If anybody would like to submit written comments, you can send them to Michelle Freethy, who is the planner in the Planning Services Department at the city, of course. Michelle.Freethy, that's Freethy @barrie.ca. And with that, I will declare the public meeting concluded. Thank you all to the residents, to Ms. Simpson, and to staff for your work on this file and for being here tonight. Members of committee, it brings us to inquiries of planning staff. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Members of planning committee, any inquiries of planning staff? Seeing none, this completes planning committee agenda this evening. It completes also the committee meetings.
I think there were some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss someone? Inquiries? Oh, Councillor Harvey and Councillor Congle, did you wave? Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey. My apologies. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Actually, I think Councillor Kungle was ahead of me there. She was waving frantically before I even got my sign up.
No, this is why I liked in-person better than Zoom. But anyway, here we are again. Councillor Kungle, then go ahead. Inquiry of staff.
Thank you. My apologies for not having my card handy. I did want to take the opportunity to ask Ms. Banfield if she could highlight some of the pieces that were just launched on our website about new foundations. So tying it to planning interests, I believe there's some deadlines, and knowing we've got a break until I think January the 10th, I was hoping maybe Ms. Banfield, you could share the opportunity that has presented itself through the initiative New Foundations.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle, absolutely. It's something that we're all very excited about, and it's a combination of some of the work that Mayor Lehman has led through the Affordable Housing Task Force, and also some of the city-initiated amendments that Council just passed back in September, relating to institutional properties and places of worship, and including residential permissions on those properties. And really what that means is us trying to work with churches and places of worship that may have some extra land, if you will, and having an identification of some of these sites that may be good properties for affordable housing partnerships. And I should also say it also ties into a motion from that council approved back in August, rather, to earmark some money to help some of these churches and places of worship with some feasibility studies. So we have now kind of gotten the website. So it's barrie.ca/new foundations, and it is now live, and really what it is, and we've got some letters and emails going out to some of the interested parties, because once this came up in August, there's already been a lot of interest. So very excited to get the housekeeping part, the zoning part in place, and now beginning to have these conversations with some churches and places of worship. There is going to be an information session in the new year, and it'll be virtual still, but it is in January, excuse me. And all those details are on the website in terms of how to register and get more information. You could always reach out to staff. It's coming through Development Services. And once we have an indication of how many properties want to explore this, then we'll take a look at the best way to spend that seed money that council approved back in August. So it's very exciting, lots of information, as I said, on the city's website. And people can always reach out to me too for more information.
I have a quick follow-up, if I may. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Ms. Banfield, I know in our language at different levels, when we've talked about opportunities and when we had passed the motion for funding, and also now, I just wanted to ask a point of clarification. Is the opportunity, I believe there's 10 potential applications up to $20,000 a piece, but is it restricted to places of worship? I have had different organizations come forward. My understanding was it could be broader. Could you, while we're referencing places of worship, could you speak to who this is really targeted towards overall?
So through your Mayor Lehman to Councillor Kungle, so it is places of worship, but also properties, institutional properties that maybe in a residential zone as well. And so, correct, the money is $200,000 up to $20,000 per feasibility study. What discussions that we've had with the task force and internally with staff have been that we will see what the interest is to try to best use those funds. And so, for example, if there are a couple of sites that seem similar, maybe we can use one study for a couple of them, or maybe there's a bunch of issues and we can use some of the money for a bunch of traffic studies as an example, or some money for a bunch of architectural designs, those sorts of things. So we're really just going to try to see the level of interest. Where it does get a bit tricky, though, Councillor Kungle, is, for some churches and some places of worship, rent a space or rent a spot in a commercial plaza. Those areas are going to be a little bit trickier because they don't, the actual organization doesn't own the property. So at this point, if anyone is interested, the best thing to do is to have them reach out to us, and we'll be able to explain that better.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Harvey, for tagging me in.
Thanks, Councillor Kungle. And it just so happened that our staff are launching this program a few days before my housing summit with the Premier and the Minister. The Premier and the Minister have asked us to, as municipalities, Ontario's big city mayors, to come in with examples of new programs, how we are trying to grow the supply of housing in our province, affordable housing in our province. And so we happen to have a brand new thing to tell them. And I really appreciate that staff are able to launch this before the holiday season to allow institutional property owners and places of worship potentially to talk about these opportunities. It won't work for all properties. It works best for those with large amounts of extra land. And we know there are a few of those institutions and places of worship who have significantly large properties or campuses that are already either in with applications or proceeding towards them. But it's my hope that we'll see a lot of potential affordable housing come out of this, led by wonderful property owners in our community. Councillor Harvey, inquiries.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I think it's fitting with it being planning meeting to mention that the final draft of the new OP has been released on buildingbarrie.ca. Thank you for Ms. Banfield keeping us up to date with that. I was just wondering, I can see here that obviously it's going to be coming to Planning Committee sometime in January. I was just wondering if you can provide a bit of an update as to when that will be and what other opportunities either residents or developers will have to be able to provide some further input before we go through the final approval.
Through your Mayor Lehman to Councillor Harvey, and thank you for that plug. The OP is a huge foundational document. At this point, the plan is to have the staff report go to Planning Committee, the first Planning Committee in January, which is January 18th. And that would be for Council to consider the adoption of the official plan. In terms of additional comments, the next opportunity would be the council meeting that so assuming that the public, after Planning Committee adopts it or gets to that point, if they do, then the next opportunity for would be deputations at council whenever that that may be. That is why staff released the document now to give people more time than just a Wednesday to Tuesday or the Thursday to Tuesday to look at it. A lot of feedback has already been incorporated, understanding that potentially not everybody is happy. Staff, as always, are happy to continue to talk to staff. Again, the adoption from council would be one step, and the actual approval authority is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So whenever we get to a point where there's an adopted plan by council, it all gets packaged off and goes to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It is going to be a meaty report coming back to council because it also includes the municipal comprehensive review that takes a look at the entire development of the city to get us to the 2051 timeframe, as well as a whole bunch of information on the consultation that has happened over the last 3 years. So as I said, it is going to be quite a bit of information to get through, and it's a full package that'll be brought back to Planning Committee.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for teeing that up, Councillor Harvey. Any other inquiries, since I completely missed the first two? Okay, seeing none, I do think that completes our agenda for this evening, and it completes the committee meetings for 2021. Here's to a great 2022. I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas and a very happy holiday, and get some time with friends and family, but not too many friends and family in one place all at once. Thanks everyone, and have a great Christmas break.